Good morning. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be here. And if you hear some excitement in my voice, it's also a little bit of nerves. But this has been an exceptional experience. I was born in Lancaster and grew up the street at First Presbyterian Church. Went to Penn State University in individual and family studies with the idea of a career in social work or social services. Over the course of working at a private psychiatric hospital in Vermont, and then here in a halfway house for delinquent and deprived adolescents, I realized that I had some more discerning to do. I have never lost what I learned in that program in dealing with people, and I think that's a very important part of ultimately what I did was to become a physician. My grandmother, Dr. Irene Davis, played a big role in that. She was a parishioner here and always spoke about this church with love. Karen and I were married in 1981, and we were married in the Presbyterian Church, but when we moved out to Pittsburgh for medical school and residency, we looked at it a lot closer. She being Roman Catholic, me being Presbyterian. And of course, we did the logical thing and came to the Episcopal Church. So we started off at Calvary Episcopal in Pittsburgh. All three of our children were baptized there. And quite frankly, with the mayhem of medical school and residency, I don't remember much more. It was a busy time. But what I do remember is walking into Calvary Episcopal and the welcome that we received. And on those Sundays when I was not on call, walking in the door, and how much of a sense of peace that was to be able to get away from the maelstrom of residency. We moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, because one thing that 8 years in Pittsburgh will do will make you a hater of snow and cold weather. So we found a church very rapidly in Raleigh, St. Michael's Episcopal Church. And I think when we went to several churches before we picked St. Michael's, but the thing that we felt there was an immediate sense of welcome and warmth and how would you like to get involved in the church? We both served roles on the vestry there, terms on the vestry there. Our children were exposed to a wonderful Sunday school program. Our musical program was world-class, and all three of our children were involved in the choir. The other thing that we saw as we were at St. Michael's was going from a relatively insular church to a church with an outward mission. And all three of my kids were involved with mission trips locally and regionally in the Southeast United States, and several trips to Belize. And I think that introduction to service and getting involved is a really important thing. When we retired as empty nesters and wanted to get back closer to family, I recall how my grandmother felt about this place. I've known Ellen Groff for a long time, even before she met Bob Groff, but the two of them being here certainly helped a great deal in coming to St. James. Over the past 3 years of being retired, one of the biggest accomplishments was being able to decelerate from a life at 75 miles an hour to a life at 35, 40 miles an hour with occasional runs up to 50. But it really has been a pleasure to be able to stop and, as Ann Lander says, smell the coffee. So what about this church? Well, in the 40 years that Karen and I have been involved in the Episcopal Church, the common theme with all three of those churches that we attended was the welcome. And it was not just a welcome, glad to meet you. It was a welcome that was there every Sunday. And then as we got involved and our kids got involved, the welcome was always there. And I think that emphasis is why St. Michael's in Raleigh was successful, We were the largest diocese or largest parish in the diocese. And over the almost 30 years that we were there, every year there was an increase in the census of our church because people were spreading the word about what we were doing. It was a very personal and local thing with an idea of being aware of the community that we were involved in and the issues that people face across the world. I think there's been an energy that I recognize here. When Kitzlau called me up and said, "Do you want to stand for Vestry?" My initial reaction was pleasure and a little bit of a shock. And then my schnoids got to me and, can I do this? Am I able to be involved in this? And it occurs to me that in the sacrament of baptism, there is a phrase that you can use almost universally, and that is, "I will with God's help." And it was amazing how quickly those nerves dissipated. I also, in all of the congregations that we've been involved with, feel very strongly the phrase also from baptism, "We will with God's help." I'm excited about being here. I'm not sure exactly what I will do, but I have confidence that it'll work out just fine. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Again, Andrew Flinchball here. Hopefully everyone can hear me through the microphone, and thank you, Chris, for your assistance with this as well. As Father David alluded to, I want to express my apologies for not attending this forum in person, but as not only one, but two people within my household have now tested positive for COVID. I'm afraid I will soon succumb to that as well. So out of an abundance of caution, I'm introducing myself via Zoom. So thanks to the blessings of technology. As I outlined in my nomination bio, my spiritual journey started when I was just a young boy. My grandfather was a Reformed minister and graduated from Franklin and Marshall College and the Lancaster Theological Seminary. He met my grandmother, who happened to be an organist, and they established their ministry in Western Pennsylvania, eventually retiring back in Lancaster. Although my grandfather was semi-retired from preaching before I was born, I did have the opportunity to hear him when he served as interim. My grandmother played the organ every Sunday while I was growing up at Zion UCC in New Providence, so I had a truly immersive and family-driven faith journey when I was young. Interestingly enough, my grandmother studied under Dr. Frank McConnell here at St. James on the organ, and when she started, the original pipe organ, which was just recently replaced, was actually brand new. As a young boy at Zion Church, I started serving as an acolyte and continued this ministry through high school. This helped instill the impact of servitude in the church and laid the foundation for my future endeavors as I grew spiritually. I sang in both the children's choir and adult choir, enjoying the gifts of music in the church. I also served as an usher and assisted with communion. After my grandparents passed away, and due to the decline in the population at Zion Church, it sadly eventually closed its doors, forcing my parents and myself to seek out a new church home. As my grandmother studied the organ at St. James and filled in on many Sunday mornings, in addition to other past family connections, we set out to attend St. James. The first service that we attended was the late Christmas Eve Mass. We were truly in awe of the music and felt at home with the liturgy and spiritual community that surrounded us. We attended the following Sunday morning service and continued that trend for a year until we officially joined as members in 2015. The last 9 years as members have been wonderful for all three of us, as we have made lifelong friends and grown in our faith in this new space. In what seemed to be short time, I was invited to join the churchyard committee, in part due to my biology and plant science background. We were tasked with reviewing the current status of the churchyard and provide any proposed plans for improvement for both our own parishioners and the greater Lancaster community. I am proud of the work of our committee as we set out to preserve our church's history while making the space more accessible to the community. And certainly a huge thanks to Kitzlau and Father David for that initial invite to join. Carol Hartley also recruited me a few years ago to serve as an acolyte director for the 10:30 a.m. services, which has been an absolute pleasure working with our youth here at St. James. It has also provided me with the opportunity to serve as an occasional adult acolyte, where I've been able to hearken back to my roots. This past October, through the support of the Mission and Justice Committee, I led the inaugural crop walk efforts on behalf of our congregation. And again, I look forward to continuing and growing this important mission to support our local community. We raised close to $2,700, and I'm excited to see where we can take this in the coming years. St. James has provided me with ongoing spiritual growth, and I know it will continue to enrich my life with new opportunities in my faith. My vision for St. James is to continue to meet the needs of its parishioners, as well as expand vital services for our community. As a young person, I also want to build upon any efforts we can to grow the attendance and involvement of our youth. Too often, children leave the church post-high school and or college and sometimes not return until they have a family with children. It is my goal for St. James to find ways to sustain this demographic. On a personal note, I have lived in Southern Lancaster County all my life, graduating from Lampier Strasburg High School and earning both a bachelor's in biology and MBA from Lebanon Valley College. Professionally, I've been employed by Emerge Education over the past 4 years, serving as the Director of Corporate Outreach, representing various colleges and universities. During my tenure, I have supported workforce development initiatives for adult learners, as well as high school students looking to reimagine their post-graduation career opportunities. It has been quite the challenge working in this space pre and post-pandemic, to put it lightly. As a final note, I just want to thank again everyone for their time in joining us in this morning, both in person and virtually, and to thank the other nominees who are dedicated in leading St. James forward. We are quite blessed with an outstanding slate of candidates. And again, it is an honor to stand for Vestry. Thank you for your time.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I think I'm too short for this podium, but that's okay. I'm Theresa Womble. I know some of you, but definitely not all of you. We've only been members of St. James for about 2.5 years. My husband, Greg, and I relocated here in June of 2021 when I joined Armstrong World Industries to lead their investor relations, corporate communications function. He's not here today. He has to travel for work, which is great because I can tell lots of stories about it. We have 3 kids. Our oldest is Millicent, and she currently works in DC in international development. We have a middle son, Emerson, who just graduated law school. Is at a large firm in New York City. And my youngest child, Marin, is a junior in Providence College and just landed in Vienna for the semester. So I'm very jealous about that. So I guess one of the, we joined St. James. Well, one of the things is when we moved here, we decided to, since we were empty nesters, a new phase of our life, to try something different, and really decided to have the Lancaster City urban experience. And so we really embedded ourselves in the tapestry of this lovely city. And we live about a block away at the corner of Orange and Lime. So obviously St. James was a logical, logistical choice, as I said in my little bio. But really it was the music, the beauty of the church, the clergy, and the connectedness of this church to the broader community that really sold it for us. But I guess the more interesting question is, why am I up here? Because we've only been here a short time. And last year I was quite shocked when Father David called me and asked me to stand. But you may recall I really wasn't here. So I call it my ghost candidacy. We had the first weekend, we were traveling, and during that travel, unfortunately, I contracted COVID and was in no place to actually show up at church or do the virtual. It was really not a good time. So I was got the call again, this time from Kit. And I guess what I think is maybe the nominating committee and Father David think I'm gullible, again, an easy mark. But in reality, I think it's the fact that I've seen some churches. I've been in the trenches with Vestry during trying times. I've seen some of what works and some of what doesn't work in a variety of Episcopal settings across the country. So I certainly don't have all the answers, but I guess the nominating committee thought I could bring a fresh perspective to this parish as we look forward to building our long-term vision for the parish, for our current and future parishioners, and also for the community at large. So how did I get here? Well, it's not an unusual story, sort of like Joe. I'm married a Catholic and I'm a Lutheran. So we kind of met in the middle in the Episcopal Church. It took a couple of years for us to get there. We met in Atlanta and quickly moved to Orlando for my husband's job. There we were married and had a baby. We got married in the Lutheran Church, which is, because I'm the woman, I usually get to pick these things. But we weren't really connected to that church. It was just a convenience factor. We moved back to Atlanta and quickly to Memphis, Tennessee. I never thought in a million years I would live in Memphis, Tennessee. Raised in Texas, undergrad at Tulane, grad school at Princeton. Memphis was not on my radar. But there I showed up, a toddler. I was pregnant with another child, and I was going to make the best of it, support my husband. And I'm a little adventurer at heart. But here's how it went. You know, I'd meet people, and the first question was, what does your husband do? And the second question is, where does he work? The third question is, what church do you go to? That was the South that I was living in. So it was a little disconnected. And but it turns out that my husband had a friend from college whose brother was a member of a nearby Episcopal church, St. George's Church, which was a very large church in that parish. And we started going, and we quickly found a group of people that we really connected with. We found a service that resonated with me, with the music and the liturgy. And so we just really found a place there. And what I really appreciated are two particular factors that will ensure that I'm Episcopalian for the rest of my life. The first is the intellectual engagement that was offered throughout the church, both in the homilies and the adult formation classes. It wasn't just somebody telling me or yelling at me what the right thing to do or the right moral way of acting was, but instead it was exploring ideas and history, posing questions with ambiguity, and a deep respect for other religions and all people. The second thing is the Eucharist. And maybe this is a little self-evident, but you brought up the baptism, so I'm bringing up growing up Lutheran, we only did communion twice a month. And for me as a kid, that was just going to be the church service that took 15 minutes longer. So it really didn't resonate with me that much. But the longer I spent in the Episcopal Church, it really began to center the service for me. And the concept of coming to church to be fed was very important. And more than that, the opportunity that you have every Sunday to take the host and the common cup and celebrate the memorial of the redemption of our sins through the life, death, and resurrection of Christ does something for me every week. It sort of recenters me, it nourishes me, and it gives me that to go back into the world of chaos and uncertainty with grace, knowing that I have a life in Christ. I thought I was going to try during that part. Well, so, we got deeper and deeper involved in that church. We joined the young parents group. We went to family dinners at different people's houses, picnics, softball games, mom's night out to movies. We did children's chapel, Sunday school, and when the rector heard that I had the PhD in Islamic and Middle East history, I was tapped to teach little adult formation classes, and then Vestry. So, and that was a great experience. The first year and a half was pretty typical, just learning how to get more involved in church, the inner workings of the church and the diocese. But our rector left for another church in North Carolina, and so we had to go through a search. And that's a very trying process. Lots of discernment. We did what we could. We thought we had the great candidate. We brought him in, and he ended up being a very divisive rector. It was very hard for that church. And we eventually left along with several other families, many other families, to go to a mission church that was led by a charismatic and priest, quickly growing to be a parish in the diocese. And I was tapped again to be on the vestry of that church. After that, a couple of years later, we were off moving again. So we moved to Florence, South Carolina. And 3 years after that, we moved to Kansas City. And 7 years after that, we went to Bergen County, New Jersey, where we were before we came here. At each place, we found great Episcopal homes. I would say with the exception of Bergen County. That is a great example of the dwindling membership of churches and the Episcopal Church in particular, and a lack of leadership at the diocesan level to really consolidate some of these small churches. We would go make visits to various parishes, and they were lovely historic churches, but maybe only 12 or 15 people in attendance. So you just really couldn't find a good community in that type of environment. So now we're here, and now you can probably understand why I really appreciate St. James in relationship to what we experienced in New Jersey. So I'm humbled and excited about the potential to serve on this vestry. And these are amazing candidates. I mean, I'm just awed by each and every one of them. But if I do have the opportunity to serve, I believe we have strong clergy and strong leadership, an excellent long-range plan, and amazing people. And as a vestry member, I would have to bring my varied experiences of Episcopal churches from around the country to help St. James be the most successful it can be while respecting its history and its strong position and tradition in its community that we already have. So thank you very much.
Well, that was superb. All 6 of them and the last 3. One of the things that we are most after, may say in I, me, my language, that I am most after in this congregation and each of you and me individually, is the felt presence of God in our lives. If God is just an idea, if church is just a culture club, if the people that we are with are just clones of ourselves or other people who in social media like what we like, then there's not anything very interesting going on here, even if we are able to pay the bills, look good, and keep the sidewalks swept.
Oh, man.
The felt presence of God is what we've heard in each of the 3 candidates this morning, of how it is that over years, decades, lifetimes, generations, in every sphere of our life, God's presence has been felt and nurtured, nudged, or challenged us, or recentered us in a different way. And that is beautiful to be able to, through a process of democratic discernment, boring bureaucracy, bring those things together in this parish life, online, in person, with a hybrid environment, is, I'm afraid, the only way to be church in the 21st century. If we are that church, we will grow considerably because of the shaking up of the rest of our culture, our world, and the churches through COVID and long before. Thank you to all those who have stood the opportunity to be together in this way. It may well be that we can just leave matters there because it was very profound. You may have some questions to me about governance and that beautiful long-range plan that we released in the first of these 4 series. So remember where we are. 3 down, 1 to go in January. The long-range plan launched, the first one, these last 2 weeks about who's standing for vestry. Next week, Sunday, the annual meeting and the overview of a bit of 2023 and a look to the shape of 2024 to come. So on that basis, let me just see, are there any more things that the candidates have said and think, oh, if I just forgot that or wanted to say something more, this is a good opportunity for Andrew, Teresa, or Joe to add anything more?
One of the things that I was pondering in this circumstance was kind of what I've done, where I've been, and retirement is a great retrospectoscope. And one of the things that I think I've seen from a practical standpoint that I see here in this church is both the addressing of joys and the addressing of tragedy. I had in residency one of my attendings who was a tremendously good surgeon and not much of a human being, but we would meet for rounds every day. And he would say, how can you all kill my patient today? I mean, and what he was doing was saying, what could go wrong here? I'm kind of a cockeyed optimist. I participated in almost 4,000 deliveries, and everybody says, what a joyful thing. And it in fact is. But I've also delivered about 100 intrauterine fetal demises and have done baptisms on them. And it just strikes me that the Episcopal Church for me has been an amazing juxtaposition of the joy of life and the sadness of life. And I think any church that doesn't address both of those is probably sailing in the wrong direction.
I think just as a final comment, as part of Gene Clark's Ministries Committee, during the initial kind of phases of the long-term planning process, it was just such a blessing to go through kind of a listening and discernment process with many of our parishioners, just having the opportunity to hear their stories and how that's impacted their growth and their faith. And similar to as Joe's just alluded to, both those joyful moments and moments of tragedy, how that can really create unity within the church and drive opportunities for growth for all of our spiritual journeys. So just as a final kind of reflection, thank you.
One other thing I would say is, the spirit of being welcoming is probably the thing that was the most important for the churches that were the highlights of our journey of 7 moves over 25 years. And that just finding ways, unique ways to welcome people in the spirit of the Episcopal tradition. I know it's uncomfortable, but if we make the effort, it can really have a long-term impact for the church. And I think that we have opportunities to get better in that area.